I have with me on the stage today two highly knowledgeable and very sophisticated colleagues. One, His Excellency Omar Saif Kobash, who is of course the ambassador of the UAE to the Russian Federation, and the other, Morinosuke Kawaguchi, who is the founder and CNO of the Moronosuke Company in Japan and a strategy expert in the management of technology and innovation. They will speak to other issues. My task is simply to frame this question in a useful way. So let's start out by asking what the purpose of education is in the first instance. Education, as you can see from those two simple illustrations at the top, one of which reflects the lateral movement of inferior planets from the time of Al-Tusi, and the other is Al-Biruni's indication of early identification of the phases of the moon. Education serves a very particular purpose. It serves in the first instance, it serves to enable us to share knowledge, skills, values, beliefs, and habits of behavior. And that, I think, is the important thing about moral and civic education. The purpose is not merely to convey knowledge and specific skills, but also values, beliefs, and habits of behavior. And indeed, from prehistory, that has been what societies sought to do. Long before formal education existed, adults sought, through initiation, imitation, and the transfer of knowledge, through storytelling, through parables, sought to inculcate both skills, capabilities, and values in the young. When formal education emerged, this was institutionalized. Our earliest knowledge of it is in the Middle Kingdom in Egypt, from about 3,000 years before the Common Era. We find it in Plato's Academy from about 350 to 400 years before the Common Era. We find it in Alexandria from about 300 years before the Common Era. We find it in China with Confucius, who is teaching his disciples codes of social comity and good governance. And Confucius's Analects still influenced East Asian societies today. After the fall of Rome in 476 of the Common Era, the Catholic Church then took up responsibility for education, and cathedral schools became medieval universities by the end of the High Middle Ages. At the same time, firstly in the Umayyad Caliphate and then subsequently in the Abbasid Caliphate, there was an extraordinary explosion of science, technology, astronomy, navigation, and a whole variety of derivative technologies across the whole of the Arab world, from Sind and Transoxania in the east, all the way to Iberia in the west, and to the Almoravid lands and the Mali Empire in the south. The Italian Renaissance brought a new revolution in this regard with the rediscovery of the Attic through Arabic texts. Out of that came the invention of the printing press by Gutenberg, which made knowledge more widely accessible, the Reformation, which broke the power of the church and eliminated Latin as the only language of instruction in the Christian world, and brought vernacular, French, German, Italian, English, enabling much wider accessibility of knowledge across the whole of the landscape. The consequence of that was the Age of Reason, the European Enlightenment, the rise of nationalism and the collapse of empires, and the Industrial Revolution. All of those phenomena brought us to the introduction of formal generic education across the entirety of the landscape by the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. So much so that today, UNESCO argues that in the next 30 years, more people will have access to education, just in those 30 years, than in the entire history of humanity to date. But the real question about all of this is, what will those people be learning, and for what purpose? And that is the key question that all of us who are concerned with education in any fashion have to address. And I think there are simple ways to think about this. In the first instance, we have to recognize that human beings, like all species, are driven by three biologically determined urges. Firstly, fear. Species survive because they scan the environment to avert threat. Secondly, want. This is necessary for both procuration and for accumulation. We would not procreate if we did not want. We would not accumulate if we did not want. But if you think about it, both of those are selfish. Both of those are related to the satisfaction of individual concerns. And they have to be balanced by what Ibn Khaldun called asabiyya, by a sense of empathy, a sense of community, a sense of communality that enables us to balance our individual objectives with those of the community of which we are a part. And those three elements of individual existence have to work together successfully. So, in that context, let's think about how we achieve that. We achieve it firstly by embedding values. Values can be ethical, they can be ideological, or they can be aesthetic. But they are individual perceptions that guide our behavior and enable us to behave in appropriate ways that are consistent both with our own beliefs and the expectations of society. Those values underpin social norms, and those social norms create levels of reciprocal expectation in society that allow us to understand what the other will do and allow the other to understand what we will do. And then what we do is we translate certain of those norms into laws, which then become enforceable through formal institutions and determine the shape of society. If you think about those relationships, they're very similar to that pattern of human behavior. Values provide the underpinning, and that is what you are seeking to embed through this program of moral and civic education. But you're also, through the civic component of this, seeking to embed the norms that constitute the framework of social expectation in society, and to create an appreciation of the laws that govern the society at large. Understanding the relationship between those three components and understanding how they fit together is central to the success of this program. And the reason for that is because norms are essential for social cohesion. Reputation and acceptance are the two elements that bind societies together, premised on norms in successful societies. Then elements like stigma and physical punishment and exclusion are elements that can be reserved for miscreants on the margins of society, because the majority of the society hangs together in a cohesive way. That, I think, is well summarized in what His Highness Mohammed bin Zayed is articulating in the framework of this program. The Civil and Moral Education Program is intended to introduce the UAE political and judicial system and develop national values of tolerance, respect, and community involvement. It's to emphasize the unique Emirati national culture and instill independence, official, critical thought, self-reliance, respect, and curiosity, and to develop a generation that embodies the multicultural, multi-faith, tolerant, respectful, and innovative nature of the UAE. It's intended to build character, instill an ethical outlook, foster community engagement, and endear culture. It underpins the whole of your legal system, because when one in a multicultural society has to deal with the reality of divergent interests and needs present within the society, you have to have a means of reconciling those divergent interests on the basis of a normative framework. That is the basis on which legislation is formulated, and that is the basis on which the courts adjudicate disputes. Understanding what those norms are, understanding what the basis of the legal system is absolutely critical in respect of the success of the whole. And reverting to the global just for a moment, it's important to understand that this is widely understood. The new Secretary General of the United Nations, in his inaugural address, made a very interesting remark. Today's paradox, he said, is that despite becoming greater connectivity, societies are becoming more fragmented. In the end, it comes down to values. We want the world that our children inherit to be defined by the values enshrined in the United Nations Charter: justice, peace, respect, human rights, tolerance, and solidarity. All major religions embrace these principles, and we strive to reflect them in our daily lives. He went on to say, the threats to these values are most often based on fear. Our duty to the peoples we serve is to work together to move from fear of each other to trust in one another, trust in the values that bind us, and trust in the institutions that serve and protect us. Understanding that in global terms means understanding that although there are diverse values among communities in the world, there is a high degree of communality as well. What we need to understand is that whereas culture is the context in which we give meaning to life and to our experiences, and although values are diverse, there are common values across almost all civilizations. Security, dignity, opportunity, justice, equity, and sustainability are common to all canons. All societies discourage sociopathic behavior that damages societal harmony. In almost all societies, bravery and empathy are promoted because they make for evolutionary fitness, they make societies stronger. And respect for the ecosystem on which we depend for our survival is vital. Otherwise, we have no ability to survive over the longer term. So let me close by offering you a simple triadic framework. All great civilizations over the last 5,000 years have actually achieved an important balance. The first is personal freedom, because without personal freedom, there is no possibility of innovation, creativity, and progress. But that personal freedom needs to be balanced by that sense of asabiyur, which Ibn Khaldun spoke of, a sense of responsibility to the community, because that is necessary for social cohesion. And we have to square the circle with those two by introducing values that respect the ecosystem on which we depend for our survival. If we get those balances right, we can have successful societies. And the essence of your program is to achieve that particular balance. Those values are common, although the balances differ. But they're common to all of the Abrahamic faith traditions. They're present in Judaism, in Christianity, and in Islam. They're present in Buddhism, in the Bhagavad Gita, and the other Mukta Upanishads, in Hinduism. They're present in the Tao Te Ching and the Confucian principles of propriety, and they're present in the Western tradition, in the Aristotelian Golden Mean. I hope that's shown you that what you're seeking to do is squarely within the global mainframe. You face an extraordinary challenge in this society because you have at its heart Emirati identity and culture, but you have one of the most multicultural communities on the planet today. And for that reason, I'm going to ask Kawaguchi-san, who has an extraordinary depth of knowledge about the successes of Japanese society in creating these types of solutions in order to enable high levels of success. Kawaguchi-san.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a great honor to be here. You know, this is a really different place. I came from the faraway Far East. Here is the UAE and Japan. You know, you are in the middle of everywhere, right? So-called Middle East and from the Far East. And for our, you know, the viewpoint is kind of Middle West too. And then we are so-called from the Far East, but it's around, it's connected, it's actually Far West too. So you are connected to the everywhere like a West and East, you are connected. But we are far from everything. But by coincidence, we are both neither belonging to the West or East, right? So whenever I talk to the UAE people here, it is really surprising. It's so similar. It was really unexpected. You know, we share the same kind of mentality. We are all both modest and then self-controlling and peace-loving people. And we are so, you know, actually look so different, right? And then climate is oppositely different, and the food is different, and clothing is different, but actually what's inside is so similar. So this opportunity, we can share a lot of things from Japan. You know, since we are so far away from everywhere, we have incubated so many unique culture or technology or everything. Like this kind of thing, you might know that, right? Sometimes it's a high culture, and sometimes it's a subculture. And then modern new technology or the old, you know, artisan technologies. These are the, you know, Japanese unique, whatever, the culture and the service and the products. But on top of that, we have so proud of this, you know, this mentality, moral mentality too. Here is the surveillance result of this travelers evaluation of each city. You know, at the end, it says that the best overall experience is Tokyo is the #1 city to visit, but at the same time, I want to insist is we are the cleanest and we are the safest and we are the nicest people, we're the kindest people. That's the evaluation of all over the world. So, you know, thank you. You know, this Dubai, look at that. It's the best shopping center, best hotels. You're sparkling, you're so rich. We're not rich anymore, but, you know, we are nice people. And how come it's so clean everywhere? We are, you know, all the infrastructure is getting so old, but it's so proud of cleanness of everywhere. You know, why Japanese, people are wondering why Japan is so clean. It's actually, there are so few trash boxes on the streets. All the, you know, the visitors are complaining, where is the trash box? Or the, you know, cleaning service of the public service is actually not so special. It's the same as other cities in the world. Or no fine for littering. But it's still so clean. Why? We have the habit. We have the educated or the early education. We are supposed to bring everything to home. Or another reason is like this. We are supposed to clean our neighborhood. Like this, you know, around your house or even around the offices or the shops. They are cleaning everywhere in front of the shop and the public spaces. That's all because of the, you know, early education. You know, people are constantly cleaning the neighborhood. Now, here is a global standard school cleaning scene. It's either the Europe, America, or the Africa, it doesn't matter. You hire the professional cleaning staff and then they clean. That's everywhere same, but not in Japan. In Japan, the students clean. We are supposed to clean every day. At the end of the school, you know, team ABC, you know, team A is today, so we clean. We move all the desks and you know, the chairs and then clean. Sometimes it's wipe the floor like this. It's actually related to the idea of the, you know, the Buddhism temples idea. They have to clean everywhere. So cleaning is such an essential. Before talking about the knowledge, before talking about the moral, if you cannot clean around yourself, you're not adult. That's our concept. Not only inside, it's outdoor too. You know, once in a while, like in any season, like they're cleaning the pool, or swimming pool or neighborhood of the school, they're supposed to clean. Or even toilet. Students are cleaning the toilet, right? It's surprising. And then it's sometimes, for global standard viewpoint, they consider this as a child abuse or something. But, look at that, it's carefully. Teachers are cleaning together. That's also another message. Teacher is not some kind of superior exist and then, supervise everything. It's not like that. We share everything so that, we have the same feeling. Imagine if you clean the toilet every day, you know how it's tough, and you're not going to mess up the toilet when you use it. That's naturally, we grew up in that kind of circumstance. How about the lunch scene? Here is, again, the everywhere same. In the lunchtime, the student goes to the cafeteria and then pick up whatever they want. But not in Japan. We eat in the class. When the lunchtime comes, the team A, today is the team A, they wear this white whatever the clothing, and they go to the kitchen and bring the stuff like that, and they feed in the class to everybody. So they get interested in whatever the food is, process is not easy to, from the farmer to the mouse, it's not easy, they learn. And also, again, here is a teacher, is eating the same menu with the student. So again, the teacher's position is quite flat too. So this time, we learn how important the food is. Here is, by the way, the global standard. If it's a mother's lunch, it's like this. It's a yummy, pretty lunch box, right? But here, I give you the example of the Japanese mother's lunch box. It's really, really tough to make it. It takes a lot of time to make it. But no wonder Japan is one of the most gourmet country. Here is the famous Michelin's 1, 2, 3 stars evaluation. Japan is number 2. Of course, the France is number 1 because the Michelin is published in France, right? But if you count the 3 stars restaurants, Japan is even more exceeding to the France. No wonder, because we do. This kind of, people, students are interested in the food from the beginning, and the mothers are making a lot of effort, so they are naturally very much interested in the food. How about the commuting scene? This is global standard. Parents are bringing the student to the school. Sometimes give a ride, or sometimes to the bus stop like this, right? But not in Japan. They go alone. This is really, really strange, right? It's public transportation. Sometimes it's at night. A very tiny child is walking around and taking the subway and go to the school far away. That's because, you remember, we have the best public, the transportation system and also the safest system. So that from the beginning, you are supposed to, support yourself. So either the viewpoint of the cleanness or the green, gourmet or safe, anything, we are so different from the global standard, but all through this, we are teaching the student, take care of yourself, you can do it all around. And at the same time, this is not a script-based education, like a preaching or the teaching by the textbook. No, it's more like an experience-based, habitual, that education. So let me summarize so far is that cleaning is very important. Before the education, you gotta clean around yourself. And so as the food, you have to appreciate the food. It's so important. It's to understand how tough the work from the farmer to the mouse is important. And also, going through all the experience, you respect the labor work. So it's a very flat society in Japan. And also, teach everyday life, not preaching or anything. And on top of it, teachers are sharing the same experience. So this kind of non-verbal learning is quite Japanese unique approach. But at the same time, in another aspect, this kind of non-verbal experience, subconsciously teaching things like that. And then we can learn from another aspect is from the heroes, athletic heroes. Typical hero is a sumo wrestler. I give you some of the example of the sumo wrestlers' education here in Japan. Sumo is our famous, the wrestling, right? There are so many wrestling in entire world. From the Canary Island to the Far East Japan, there are so many of this traditional, old historical wrestling, and they are all like 1,000 years old, and so as Japanese sumo. But it looks like so different, right? They're so big and chubby and whatever. It's so different, not only outlook, but it's actually, the conceptual three big difference I, introduced today. First uniqueness is sumo is a professional wrestling in Japan, but there is no weight class. Any kind of the martial arts, from the wrestling to the karate or anything, they have the weight class because if you are born small, you have zero chance to win against a heavyweight, the wrestler. But here in Japan, the sumo is different. If you want to be the sumo wrestler, professional wrestler, all you need is more than 67 kilogram. It's quite small, right? But how come it's possible is, here is a good example. There is a very famous, rivals. One is a Mainomi, smallest one. Smallest is still 96 kilogram, but the biggest one is a Konishiki. He's a Hawaiian. He's 3 times bigger. And then they had 12 times of the match history in their career. Who was winning is actually Mainomi, 7 wins. How come it's possible to win against a 3 times bigger guy? It's no way in the ordinary wrestling, right? Because the rule is so different. Rule is so simple, 2 only rules to win. If you are pushed out of this small circle, you are out. You lost. Or if you touch any part of the body except behind the foot, you are lost. That's so simple. Therefore, average time of the whole game is only 8 seconds. It's so short, right? Quickly, it's done. Therefore, there is a small opportunity chance for the small guy to win against a big guy. And the audience is expecting to see the moment the small guy can, see the small guys are beating the big guy. So that's a different concept. In the entire world, people went into, to be fair, for the fairness concept is, okay, let's, classify the weight category. But Japanese went into the opposite direction. Let's give the small guy to give the chance to win against the big guy. Therefore, they thought a lot about this rule. So this effort can overcome the talent. The unique point second is a victory pose is not allowed. In any athletic sports, from the golfing, tennis, or even the ice skating, when they did a good job, they do this guts pose, this victory pose. And nobody even wonder why not. They did a good job, why not, right? But in sumo, it's strictly taboo, to show your the facial expression. Here is a typical example of this wrestling. This is the Olympic. And then at the end of the game, the judge is showing to everybody, here is a winner, here is a loser. And then to make sure they even flip it to the opposite side and make sure this is a winner and this is a loser, right? And it's kind of cruel for Japanese. Or even money winner. You are the champion, so you got the $100,000 a year, right? But that's not, of course, the sumo wrestler is also the professional athlete, so they get the money when they win. But, they are not supposed to do facial expression at all because, their loser is right there. So they have to consider about the loser's emotion. It was like a replacement of the duel of the samurai. If this was a real samurai's duel, you win means other guy is dead. So you have to respect, this time by lucky, I won, but next day, we don't know, I could be dead. So that's why, as far as the rival is here, we're not supposed to show any facial expression. Here is the equivalent sports of this martial arts, like fencing is a kendo, archery is a kyudo, wrestling is a sumo, and boxing is a judo. But all of them, they are all Japanese athletes I took the photo, but they are all doing the global standard. But kendo, kyudo, sumo, they are not allowed to do this victory pose. If they do it, sometimes your win will be canceled and disqualified as an athlete. But look carefully at the judo. This is a famous Japanese athlete is doing this. Why? Because it became the Olympic sport and globalized. So it's such a dilemma for the kyudo or sumo people who wants to spread this, the nice, athletics to the world, but they know what happened to the judo. Even the Japanese athletes were, following the global standard rule. They are doing this. So that's such a dilemma. The third unique point is the judge, the skill, concept of the skill is different. There are 82 authorized patterns to win the sumo, by the Sumo Association, admit 82 patterns. Just like number 5 is a, overarm throw. So when the game is over, the judge says, call the names of the winner. Here is the winner, Mainomi, and then at the same time he has to pronounce how he won. For example, his famous left arm overthrow, he won. So, and that fact will be registered forever. So the point is, of course, it's a game, so that who won is very important, but at the same time, as much as that, how he beautifully won as an achievement of his rigorous the exercise is as much as important. So that's the three messages. So therefore, this Japanese famous animation, in any animation, you might know some of them, like Kamehameha or Space Thunder. At the end of the story, when they beat the enemy, they always shout their famous signature skill. That's because how he won is very important, and the kids are expecting, okay, finally he is shooting the drive shoot. That's what I wanted to see. That's a bit different concept. Who win is important, but how he won is quite important too. So those three messages we learn from this sumo wrestlers are, remember, first one is a no weight class, means your exercise, this skill can overcome your talent, the size. Then unique number two is the victory pose is not allowed. You have to always, if you win, there is a loser. So you gotta think of it more sympathetic to the loser's mind. And then number three is a final weapon has a name. Always, how to win is important. That's the message, subconscious message from the admiring hero. Every day they are watching the sumo wrestling. And the sumo wrestler is not teaching like a lecturing like a teacher, but they are admiring this behavioral teaching. So today I was showing the ordinary school life scene and hero's behavior. They are basically same messages they are teaching to the child every day. One is from the school scene. You remember cleaning is important, and the food is very essentially important. You should know how tough to deliver the food, and then respect the farmers and the cleaners, and those kind of labors. And then second, the message from the hero is just as I told you, the effort is overcoming the skill, and the winners. If you are the winner, you got to think of the loser. And then how he won is as important as who won. Those are the messages from the the admiring heroes. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, we are so different. We believe in different religion. Climate is so opposite. But actually, I can feel no matter what talk to the people in UAE, what they are looking for is so similar. By chance, I don't know why, but probably we don't belong to either of West or East. So I hope this can inspire you something for your further education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kawaguchi-san. I'm sure that everyone took many important lessons away from that, some of which are specific to the success of Japan, and many of which are capable of being extrapolated out into other societies. I'd now like to turn to His Excellency Omar Saif Qabash, who, if I may, Omar, who epitomizes, in a certain sense, in one person, the extraordinary challenges of achieving what it is that you seek to achieve in the United Arab Emirates.
Well, thank you.
We have here a man of Arab parentage on his father's side, of Russian parentage on his mother's side, who suffered at an early age the shocking and entirely unwarranted assassination of his father, a highly distinguished political diplomat in the United Arab Emirates, and who was subsequently educated at one of England's finest public schools, Rugby School, and then went on to the University of Oxford at Balliol College, which is one of the most demanding entry requirements among all of Oxford's colleges. So in one man, you have the cultural diversity of the United Arab Emirates, and you have somebody who is deeply proud of his Emirati heritage and who is at the same time a remarkable citizen of the world, who I may add speaks 5 languages. So, Omar, tell us, within the framework of all of that, what is your view and your takeaway of this challenge of moral and civic education in the UAE?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for that beautiful introduction. It's going to be difficult to live up to all of that. I also would like to say, just before I answer your question, I promised my sons and their friends that I would give you all detention for not paying attention and being on your telephones. So no lunch break for anybody today. Please stay behind. I think the reason why I'm here is because I wrote a book recently, and it came out in January in the United States and the UK, and it's coming out in a number of other languages, and it's a series of letters to my older son. And I talked to him about some of the issues that I think that his generation is facing right now. The reason I say that is because I certainly faced it as I was growing up. There are very many ideological pressures, there are political pressures, we're living in a globalized society, and we're living as Arabs and Muslims in a society and economy that is very, very different from what our parents may have told us. And so I tried to provide him with a certain kind of individualistic framework for how to approach the world. Some people think that I wrote a book about religion. I didn't write a book about religion. I wrote a book about how to approach the world, including religion. Myself was brought up in the Emirates until the age of 15, and I experienced the educational system. I was at a private school, and I'll point out that it was a for-profit school, which as a child made me very, very sensitive to the idea that somebody was making money out of the fact that I was trying to get an education. And I think that money, that profit-making idea or ethic was reflected in the way in which we were taught. Corners were cut. We were spoon-fed. There was a lack of interest in us as individuals. There was much more interest in reaching results, getting results, and if we didn't get the results, well, you were free to leave. And I actually ran away from school here and went to England, where I managed to get into a very good school that was called a public school. These are all charitable institutions, which I find fascinating. You pay your fees, none of that money is paid out to any shareholder, and any extra money left at the end of the year is then put back into the school. And I find it had a really serious effect on me. I felt that the school was more interested in me rather than in profit making. So just to put an ethical kind of framework around it, I think that's one thing that kids are very aware of. I'm going to let you ask me a question, unless you feel that I'm on the right track.
No, I think you're very much on the right track. But I think the remarkable thing about this book of essays, Letters to Your Son, which I have read and which I enjoyed enormously, I should add. The interesting thing is that what you're seeking to do throughout in that book is convey a moral perspective, convey an ethical perspective, convey a perspective which anchors moral identity in a global framework that allows an Emirati who is a Muslim to be part of a global landscape and to be able to participate fully within that framework while remaining true to his own heritage and his own identity. That, I think, is, in one sense, a very central part of the challenge that this program has in the UAE today. This is an enormously multicultural society in which Emiratis make up, in the school population as well as in the larger society, a small percentage.
Sure.
And at the same time, you have to maintain moral cohesion in a wider landscape while retaining deep respect and cultural value in respect of both religion and Emirati identity. You're one of the few people who's lived that experience, and I thought the book sought to encapsulate that effectively in a series of lessons for Saif. Tell us how you think about that.
Well, I do recognize the relationship between social cohesion and the individual. And much of what we've been taught in the past is that social cohesion is much more important than any personal expression. And so one of the approaches that I take in the book is to really focus in on the individual and how the individual child and in fact a human being can, with dignity, with individuality, with self-respect, express themselves while at the same time maintaining a relationship to the community. One of the reasons I put this forward is because I think, particularly with the rise of radical Islam, there has been an attempt to wipe out the idea of individual identity and convert the individual Muslim into basically ammunition in a kind of global war against the West. And I feel that this is, and so instead of, rather than asking us to take individual responsibility, we're encouraged to sacrifice ourselves as individuals for a greater cause. So in the book, I try to balance out the idea of, yes, there is community, but for us there to be a healthy community and one that we're proud of, you need to have solid individuals. Individuals with personality, with character, with direction, with an understanding that there is a balance between community and the individual. My own sort of instinct is that at the moment we are heading too much towards this blind sacrifice for greater causes that we aren't really fully aware of, that we don't really know why we're sacrificing for ourselves for that cause. And so my focus in the book is on the individual. That doesn't mean that I am anti-community or anti-social cohesion. There is another aspect that I heard you speaking about that I think is very important, and partly why I didn't get up from my seat to sit in the assigned seat. I feel that we are in many ways managed and directed, and the social cohesion can be taken too far. We're expected to conform. And I think that there is a way in which we can work together without necessarily conforming. And if you look at the way we are as Emiratis, all of the men are dressed in white, all of the women are dressed in black. There's a lot of conformity already in our society, and I think that actually one of the problems is that there is too much cohesion and too little space that we give each other to express ourselves in more interesting ways. And one last thing that I think is very important, that in creating this moral, ethical, socially cohesive society, many people are then left on the sides. So there are the marginals, there are the poorly educated, those who come from broken homes, we have drug addiction, we have serious people who are seriously kind of considering atheism, and I've met with a number of these different people. And I think that actually we need to be very sympathetic to those who are on the margins of society and those who don't fall within the normal categories. They tell us perhaps where we're going wrong. And they also demonstrate, if you speak to them, they demonstrate certain very critically important features that we're not responding to. Specifically when it comes to religion and faith, some of the people I've spoken to have said that the responses of our clerical class, the responses of the teachers of religion at school are simply not convincing, or they just put you down and they don't let you think. So the result is that rather than having a socially cohesive group, we have people who leave the society.
Thank you so much, Amar. Murunasuke, I'm going to come to you for a closing word because as a result of our schedule, we're extremely tight on time now. But you made a very interesting observation to me last evening in respect of the role that the samurai class played, both during the height of the samurai period and thereafter within Japanese society. And I make this point because of that triangle that I offered at the end, which I think Omar has just spoken to brilliantly. You have to balance individualism, individual freedom, which is necessary for innovation, creativity, and progress, with a sense of obligation to community, asabiya, the sense of some wholeness. And then you have to recognize the realities of the ecosystem within which you operate so that you do not exceed those boundaries and destroy the civilization. Now, I think the example you gave me of the samurai illustrates that point superbly, and I'd love it if we could close with that thought.
All right. You know, from 17th to 18th, 19th century, we had a samurai period. We broke the country, so we had no relation to the other overseas. And actually, it was very peacetime. There was no civil war, any challenge to the samurai. So it was totally, ceasefire, and it's so peace. So for 300 years, like a 20 generation of the samurais, more the time goes by, they start wondering why I am here, born as a ruler here. It's less than 10% of the population, but they have a lot of authority to, even if their owner is hurt by the merchandiser, they have the authority to kill them because they are hurt. But they didn't do that, and then they are not corrupted. Then for a long time, 300 years of peace, they had to train themselves. Why they are existing as a ruler was really tough training. Mental training was very developed. And one of the most famous one is called Hagakure. Hagakure is one of the teaching. Okay, you are born as a son of the samurai, the father and the son at the morning when you wake up, what you do is a simulation game. Okay, you go into the forest walking, and you meet a tiger, and the tiger eats you, from the head. It's so painful and ugly, and you're breathing, and you'll so die. So first in the morning, father and the son die in the mental training. So it means for the rest of the whole today, 24 hours is a given, God-given, service. So I am a totally social servicer. It was lucky arrive, so that they can dedicate their lives to do something good for the people. So that's how they had to train themselves, because that somehow they are given the peace was, really they had to, justify themselves why I am here. So that's the, that much effort they had to keep doing for 300 years to motivate themselves. So this kind of mentality is quite difficult. It's so easy to go into this corruption and whatever, take advantage of the being powerful. But they didn't do that. It was such a tough training. You can imagine, right? So, that was the, something wiseness from the previous generations, the idea, the wisdom. So the point is, they did not have to be actually the innovative. But what they have to do is they have to provide the circumstance as a platform to the merchandiser, or the farmer, or the engineer, do whatever they want. So that's as a platform, they themselves doesn't have to create a lot of things, right? But they have to provide the circumstance itself. And for that, they created this wiseness of this Hagakure.
Thank you very much for that splendid exposition, Morinosuke. I think once again, if you think about the role of government, which is essentially to provide an enabling environment for members of the society to be able to actualize their potential, realize everything that they are capable of, and enable the society to progress in a constructive way, then that metaphor of the samurai fits brilliantly with Omar's balance between community responsibility and individual ability, and the ability to be able to unlock the potential of the individual, which is so central to this moral code. If civic education is a key component of moral education, then understanding what individual responsibility in the interests of the community is all about is the central element in respect of this equation. You're going to spend the rest of today, and probably the rest of the next 20 years, grappling with these challenges within the context of the UAE, but I hope that this introductory session has provided you with at least some thoughts that you'll be able to use as you grapple with this wonderful challenge. Thank you very much indeed, and if I could